Standing here is the 700-gallon Sealcoat trailer mounted on a 18-foot Liberty flat bed. We have our upgraded air compressor, 13 horse Honda motor, 60 psi, 30 CFM. You have your agitation motor. That's a 60 chain, and the sprocket, I believe, is right around the 32 tooth. Hydraulic tank, single valve, forward and reverse, neutral. Here's your spray wand, 100-foot spray wand. This tube right here is your overflow tube, so you can pump back into the tank. 2-inch Aero pump. Here's your drain port if you'd like to drain out. 3-gallon filter basket and pot. Quick cams for pumping in and out. And your control. Air regulator. Area for your brooms and sweepers. And your manway. Lifting hooks on the top. And here's your broom box. 52-inch broom box. Comes on a 14,000-pound chassis, 2 7,000-pound axles. Complete unit. We're looking at a 500-gallon trailer mounted on a 14,000-pound GVW trailer. What we have here is a 2 5/16 ball hitch, chains, brake release, everything that we need for a trailer to work appropriately. You have your quick release on your jack stand, and then we have the jack crank. This particular trailer does have a junk box mounted on the front. Just a very simple box. This trailer does have a battery with the fuses. It does not have a battery, excuse me. It has the fuse box, so that if we wanted to put a 12-volt system on here, we can. Trailer comes with diamond plate material, along with our ramp system that we have here. Going over the ramp, just a simple cotter pin, release, ramp folds down. Quite a bit of real estate on the trailer for anybody to use, stripers, or anything else they wanted to put on here. Starting with the air compressor. The air compressor is a roll air compressor, comes with a 13 horsepower Honda motor. It does have the key start option. It does not come with a battery, but it can be hooked up to a battery, which would then go back to the fuse box. Operating pressure on the compressor is usually around 100 psi, is usually where it sits. On this particular compressor, we have ports on either side of the tank. We're choosing driver's side. When you're hooked up to it, driver's side, everything goes there. So you have your ball valve, which comes in the on position. Simply just turning it off to get air back to the air regulator, which we'll get there soon. On the air compressor itself, we have the pump that's mounted off the back of the air compressor on the flywheel. It is very important to tighten these bolts after a period of time to make sure that vibration hasn't taken them apart of anything. Very important. On the tank itself, we have a hydraulic motor that starts the agitation. On the agitation, it's very simply put where these brackets here are slotted. So you have movement in the up and down position. If something were to happen with the motor or the chain, you have the ability to push this up and down to ease tension off the chain. When we deal with the chain is a 60 chain is what it's known as. This is a 13-tooth sprocket, and then the sprocket will vary based on the size of the tank for the main sprocket itself. There is a set screw on this sprocket here that needs to be checked and tightened on a relatively routine basis, what I would say is a weekly basis. Same thing for the bottom sprocket. You can see the set screw right there. Off that set screw is a pillar block bearing, which will show a little better picture on the backside, but the pillar block bearing has a grease zert that it also needs to be greased on a weekly basis. Here is your manway with lifting hooks on both sides, and we will do another video on the manway. On the trailer itself, we have a 52-inch broom box. The broom box is a very simplistic box. We always put the manual on the inside for the customer. And then we have weld flanges on both sides. And you can see the little bit of surface rust when we do our die check and we fill it up and make sure everything is checked off. There's no harm in that surface scale rust. These weld flanges, what a lot of guys like to do is they like to put a ball valve, bring in an elbow and extend it out if they want to drain this out, or take it through the deck itself and put a bucket underneath the trailer. You can do that on either side. Here is the air regulator. The air regulator is just like any other air regulator. Positive is more air, negative is less air pressure. This blue hose, and sometimes an orange, will go back to the air compressor itself. You can monitor your air pressure. Some guys, like what we do is we'll say a range, and a range is going to be somewhere between 80 PSI and 100, 120 at the max to run a spray bar or multiple wands, but depending on what the customer has on store. We have our filter pot, which we're going to do another video on the filter pot itself. This is just a run through. And then we have our 2-inch Aero pump. The 2-inch Aero pump is a multi-purpose pump. If you're running totes, you can hook into the 2-inch inlet here. If you're running a tote system, you can plug in here with a male adapter. Ball valve it on. You always want to make sure that your spray bar is off, or your spray wand is off. Your complete discharge is turned off. Your gravity 2-inch ball valve is shut off. And this valve is turned on, which allows the tote to be put into the top of the tank. That's to bring it in from the tote. If you want to be able to, if you're at a service station where they can push harder, you can come through the front. Now, the opposite situation, the gravity feed is turned on. Everything else at the pump is turned off. And then you will force the sealer from the bottom up. Or you can simply go through the manway and just dump it through the top if you like. When operating your spray wand, you have your valve here. This is your spray wand valve. In this particular situation, this is a bypass for the excess material going up. It's not a bad practice to leave that open. However, some people will shut that off so that you get full pressure to the spray wand itself. This is your discharge valve. That would be turned off, and this valve would be turned off. Your gravity valve is on. Moving to the spray wand. The spray wand is a mechanical. At the time of order, it can be an electric. That would require a 12-volt battery system. This is a mechanical reel. And what I did here is I just unplugged it into the open position. And now you can just crank your hose up. and set it back. Easy. Here is your spray wand. The spray wand, you'll want to leave your valve open at all times. When applying the application, you can simply turn this valve on and off when you're applying sealer at the driveway. You routinely would like to check your tips. Make sure your tips are fine. Here is your valve bank to do your agitation. This valve is considered a three-way valve. However, you have to physically stand here to move it. It will always bounce back into neutral. So you have forward, neutral, reverse, and it will always come back to neutral. We put a 5-gallon hydraulic tank on top of the valve bank itself. It's all-purpose hydraulic fluid. Nothing special about the hydraulic other than all-purpose. The tank itself comes with 2 tanks. One is a 30-gallon, and the second is a 40-gallon. On both tanks, you have a 2-inch port on the top for your fill, and you have a 3/4 inch on the bottom for your, if you're running fuel or water or whatever we would like to do with the tank itself. You have your fill, and you have your supply line. We're going to get into a little more depth with the Aero pump. It's a 2-inch pump. An Aero pump is built, manufactured, and distributed by Ingersoll Rand. It has the name, has the quality behind it. They're good people. Starting from the bottom, we drill these holes through the tank, through the bed, and we just use simple bolts and washers to lock it down on all 4 sides, as you can see. Here is your air line that comes in. This line goes back to the air regulator. And the air regulator is what is going to give you your PSI output to your spray wand and to your spray bar. This pump comes equipped with a muffler. The muffler is obviously a muffler is a deafening apparatus. If you take the muffler off, the pump is going to run extremely loud. Earplugs are definitely going to be needed if you take that muffler off. On these ball valves, and we explained in the overall way of how the trailer works, this is if you're filling up from a tote, this valve is the valve you want to use. You take your plug out. It's just a cam lock, 2-inch cam lock. You take your plug out. You put your male hose in from your tote. You open this valve. You close your gravity feed valve. You make sure you close your spray wand, and you make sure you close your discharge completely off. The only one that's turned on is to the top. So this valve would be turned on, and this valve would be turned on to run a tote. If you want to do a full clean of your system regarding running everything through the system, you will turn your return line off. You will leave your gravity fill on along with your going through the filter pot into the pump, let it mix, and then you're going to do a full discharge through the top of the pump. This goes through the surge bottle itself, cleans everything off, including your spray bar if you ordered a spray bar. What the surge tank is for, the surge tank is specifically because a diaphragm pump actuates and it pulsates as it's coming through. Material, how the pump works is material comes from the bottom, pumps through the pump into your 4-way, will hit the surge bottle, to deafen the sealer so it doesn't shoot out in pulsates. It allows a very clean, even flow of your material. This video is on the pillar block bearing. The pillar block bearing is a 2 7/16 shaft, 6-inch bolt pattern pillar block bearing. This green cap is your cap for your greaser. You just put it on and now I can't get it off. There we go. This is where you want to put all-purpose grease, and you can see how we've greased it around the bearing itself. You want to check your set screws to make sure they're tight. But the most critical thing is applying grease to the pillar block bearing. If we don't put grease on the pillar block bearing, sealer will find its way through the bearing itself and start dripping on the tank. This bearing is found on the front, on the main sprocket, and here on the rear of the tank. To pan out, right here is the pillar block bearing. Just requires a little bit of grease on a weekly basis. This is our filter pod. This is a 3-gallon filter pod. I took the liberty to already loosen it up a little bit just to give you an idea of what's going on here. So what we do is we have manufactured a stopway for total locking and then a screw down to completely lock it down. So I've already loosened it up a little bit for demonstration purposes. How it works, you just slide it through that on both sides. It has a lock. So you take it off, and the top of this is sandwiched in. This is actually a very hard rubber that comes off of a rock crusher. This is what we use the belt for, to get a full seal on the filter pod itself. This can be tightened down if it needs to. So what we have here is in our filter pod itself. This has been in water now for our test. This is for your emulsion filter pot. So you can see how the holes are for emulsion. Comes with a handle. This pot needs to be cleaned out as often as you grease the pillar block bearing on a weekly basis. The tank inside does have water in it with that little ring where the filter pot itself sits on. We're going to put the cover back on. And then you just screw it down. It's not completely tight for seal, but you get the idea. What this weld coupling is for is before any material goes in, this is where the hookup is for total clean out of your system. If you want to run a garden hose, or if it is attached to the tank that's underneath the tank itself. This is your clean out. So you would have pressure against the filter pot. You run your water, goes through the pump, through the system, and completely cleans out your system for maintenance purposes. Here's the filter pot. Here's the filter basket that we manufacture right here. As you can see, these holes are quite small. These are for the emulsion. Larger the hole is for coal tar. There's the basket. Sits right in. Put your top on. Screw it down. She's ready to go. Here we are. We're sitting in the back of a 500-gallon. To get to do a reverse spray, here's the filter basket. Right here is your weld flange to put a hose onto it. You ball valve off the tank. You put whatever kind of hose fitting you want to have on here. This is just a plug. You take your plug off. This is before anything happens. You put your plug, pull your plug out, put your adapter in of whatever type of hose you're putting on. You make sure your top is sealed like normal, and then you start flushing out however you're going to do it. So again, ball valve off. However you're going to put your hose on, sealed up, let her rock, discharge. There's your process.